How 2 eggs a day change Helen's life. Have you ever felt like your body is slowing down even though your spirit still wants to do more? That's how Helen, a 72-year-old retired schoolteacher living in Oregon, had been feeling lately. She had always lived a quiet, fulfilling life. Her days were filled with tending to her flower garden, knitting on her front porch, and volunteering at the local church on weekends. Her home, tucked away in a peaceful neighborhood, was cozy and filled with memories. Framed photos of her grandchildren, the scent of lavender from her favorite candle, and the ticking rhythm of her grandfather clock. Helen had raised 3 children, lost her husband 5 years earlier, and found comfort in small, steady routines. Mornings started with the same black coffee and a look out the kitchen window. She enjoyed feeding the birds, reading mystery novels, and taking slow walks around the neighborhood. Though content in many ways, Helen had begun to notice an unsettling drift in how she felt physically and mentally. Lately, she often felt fatigued, even after a full night's rest. Her joints ached when she reached for the watering can, and reading had become more of a strain than a joy. Her mind, once so quick, had started to falter. She would forget names, lose track of conversations, or find herself standing in a room unsure why she'd walked in. Her doctor reassured her these were normal signs of aging, but that explanation didn't sit well with Helen. She wasn't hoping to turn back the clock. But deep inside, she longed to feel a bit more like the woman she used to be. Energetic, alert, grounded. What she wanted was simple: to enjoy her everyday life with more ease, to feel strong in her own body, and keep living independently for as long as she could. Helen wasn't looking for a miracle cure or a complicated diet. She wanted something simple, sustainable, something she could do without turning her life upside down. Her hope was not to reverse aging, but to support herself through it with grace. She often sat by the kitchen window in the mornings, sipping her coffee, watching the birds gather at the feeder. It was during one of these quiet moments that a small, unexpected discovery would soon begin to change her daily rhythm, a discovery that started with something as simple as 2 eggs. One rainy afternoon, with her cardigan wrapped tightly around her shoulders and a warm cup of chamomile tea in hand, Helen sat down at her kitchen table to browse the internet. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, maybe a new gardening tip, a cozy casserole recipe, or even a classical music playlist. But a video thumbnail caught her eye. It was titled, "What Happens When You Eat 2 Eggs a Day?" Something about it intrigued her. Maybe it was the simplicity or the idea that such a small habit could matter. Curious, she clicked. The video wasn't flashy or filled with gimmicks. A calm, friendly voice explained the surprising health benefits of eggs, how they were packed with high-quality protein, essential vitamins, and brain-boosting nutrients like choline and lutein. The speaker shared how eggs could help with satiety, eye health, memory, and even energy levels. It all sounded too simple to be true, but also too simple not to try. Helen leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. She had always enjoyed eggs, boiled, scrambled, poached. They were comforting, familiar, and easy to prepare. Unlike so many health trends she had come across over the years, this one didn't require a trip to a specialty store or a complete lifestyle overhaul. No special powders, no subscription plans, just something she already had in her refrigerator. "I've tried more complicated things in my life," she said aloud to herself with a small chuckle, "and they didn't get me far." She thought back to the last time she had made a change for herself, not for someone else, not to follow a fad, but just because she wanted to feel better. It had been a long time. The very next morning, she placed 2 brown eggs into a pot of water, brought it to a gentle boil, and paired them with whole grain toast. It wasn't a big change, but something about it felt purposeful, like the first step toward reclaiming a bit of the spark she thought she had lost. She made a quiet mental note. "I'll try this for a few weeks and see how I feel." She didn't expect a miracle, but for Helen, it was a gentle promise to herself, to care a little more, to nourish her body with something wholesome, and to just see what might happen next. Within just a few weeks of adding 2 eggs to her morning routine, Helen began noticing subtle but meaningful changes. For starters, she realized she wasn't reaching for mid-morning snacks like she used to. The simple protein boost helped her feel satisfied longer. She even lost a few pounds, nothing drastic, but enough to make her clothes fit a little more comfortably. Her appetite throughout the day became more balanced, and she felt more in tune with her body's natural rhythms. More importantly, she felt mentally sharper. Her morning crossword puzzles became easier, and she was no longer struggling to remember names or misplacing items quite so often. When chatting with friends on the phone or during her weekly book club, she noticed her mind felt clearer, her thoughts more fluid. There was a lightness in her conversations, a quiet confidence returning. Reading also became more enjoyable again. Without the frequent need to adjust her glasses or strain her eyes, Helen found herself spending long, peaceful afternoons immersed in novels. Her eyes felt less dry and tired, and her vision seemed slightly more focused. It made her wonder if the lutein in those eggs, as mentioned in the video, was truly making a difference. Winter settled in, and while neighbors and friends caught seasonal colds and sniffles, Helen remained healthy. Her immune system, once a quiet concern in the back of her mind, seemed stronger than before. At her next checkup, her doctor smiled and noted how stable her blood sugar levels were. Remarkably so. Helen beamed with pride, knowing she had done this not with medication, but with breakfast. Even her appearance seemed to benefit. Her thinning hair looked a bit fuller, her skin less dull, and her nails no longer chipped as easily. It wasn't about vanity. It was about seeing her body respond with vitality, proving that it still had strength and resilience when given the right support. No, Helen didn't feel 20 again, but she felt good, steady, clear-headed, energized. And it all traced back to one simple change. A pair of eggs, each morning, had gently but powerfully nudged her back toward the version of herself she had been missing. As Helen began to feel the benefits of her new breakfast routine, her curiosity deepened. If something as small as 2 eggs could make such a difference, what else could she learn? She wanted to be thoughtful about her choices. Not just eat eggs, but eat them in the healthiest ways possible. She began experimenting in the kitchen. Instead of frying eggs in butter, she tried poaching them or scrambling them with a dash of olive oil. On some mornings, she soft-boiled them and served them over sautéed spinach or avocado toast. These small adjustments help her enjoy variety while keeping her meals light and nourishing. She even tried adding herbs from her garden, chives, parsley, and a sprinkle of paprika to elevate the flavors. Helen also became more cautious about egg safety, something she hadn't paid much attention to before. She read articles about how to store eggs properly, learned to avoid using any with cracked shells, and began checking expiration dates more diligently. Cooking the eggs just right became a small act of care. She realized that overcooking not only made them rubbery, but also reduced their nutritional value. A visit to the local farmer's market one sunny Saturday opened up even more possibilities. She noticed a small stand run by a cheerful young woman selling duck and quail eggs. The woman explained how duck eggs had more omega-3s and richer yolks, while quail eggs were packed with nutrients and perfect for bite-sized dishes. Helen, intrigued and inspired, brought home a few of each. She experimented over the weekend, delicately cracking the tiny quail eggs into muffin tins with vegetables and whisking the duck eggs into a creamy frittata. It was fun. It felt like a culinary adventure. The act of discovering new ingredients and preparing meals with intention became something she looked forward to each day. This little food adventure brought her joy. It wasn't just about the eggs anymore. It was about paying attention to her body, her meals, and the choices she made. For Helen, this was more than a habit. It had become a quiet act of self-respect, a way of staying connected to life through something as simple as breakfast. With every passing week, Helen's confidence grew, not just in how she felt physically, but in the choices she was making. It wasn't long before her friends began to notice the change too. At the community center, during Wednesday morning knitting circles, someone finally asked, "Helen, you've got such a glow about you lately. What's your secret?" She smiled a bit shyly and replied, "Well, believe it or not, it might just be the eggs." That simple answer led to a dozen questions, and soon, Helen was sharing her story with others. How a small, consistent change in her breakfast helped her feel better than she had in years. Her story resonated. especially with friends who were also navigating the ups and downs of aging. The staff at the center even invited Helen to speak at a monthly wellness talk. She stood in front of a room filled with fellow retirees, holding up 2 eggs in her hands, and told them what she had learned. No preaching, no pressure, just a heartfelt account of her own journey. Back at home, the ripple continued. Her daughter began serving eggs more often to the grandkids, and her son, who usually skipped breakfast, started texting her photos of his scrambled egg experiments. Her story had made its way into kitchens far beyond her own. What had begun as a quiet personal change had become a source of encouragement to others. Helen never imagined that something so small could inspire so much. Looking back, Helen often marveled at how something so ordinary had brought about such meaningful change. She hadn't joined a fitness program, overhauled her diet, or started a new medication. She had simply made a small, mindful adjustment to her mornings, and it changed the way she felt each day. Her body felt stronger, her mind clearer, and her spirit lighter. Each morning no longer began with grogginess or hesitation, but with a sense of purpose. Making breakfast wasn't just a chore anymore. It became a ritual of care. The eggs, once taken for granted, had become a symbol of self-respect. Her meals became moments of nourishment, not just for her body, but for her emotional well-being too. She had more energy to tend her garden, which was now blooming more beautifully than ever. Books that once sat unread on the shelf were now dog-eared from use. Phone calls with her children and grandchildren felt livelier. She even began journaling again, something she hadn't done in years. Helen knew that aging came with its own set of challenges. There were still days when her knees ached or when sleep eluded her, but she no longer felt powerless. She had found a sense of rhythm, of balance, through the simple act of choosing better each morning. She began to believe that health wasn't just about fighting decline, but about feeding vitality, gently, consistently, and with care. She now encourages others to find their own 2 eggs, a small daily habit that brings a sense of grounding and wellness. It doesn't have to be eggs. It could be a walk, a stretch, a quiet cup of tea. What matters is that it's done with intention. As she often tells her friends with a smile and a wink, it's amazing what 2 little eggs can do. And perhaps that's the deeper message Helen carries forward. That wellness isn't always found in grand gestures, but in the quiet, loving choices we make each day for ourselves and for the life we want to keep living well, one mindful morning at a time.